Well, if you're feeling all right and you think you're on,
somebody let me know. Well, everybody in the place put a whistle in your face. Scream it out and say, yo, hit it. You don't stop. I rock the rhythm that makes your finger pop. I said a hip hop, and thanks a lot. Come on, everybody, give me what you got.
I'm gonna tell you a little story about the Sugar Hill Gang with the pow pow.
At the time of Style Wars, in the early 80s, the institutional attitude towards graffiti was almost universally negative. The public was divided. Some people loved it and some people hated it. But institutions in general were very negative about it. There was no, I mean, even to this day, the Museum of Modern Art has not shown any graffiti artists, except with the slight possibility of having shown Jean-Michel Basquiat and Keith Haring, who were not, at the time, kids who were painting the trains. People in general were against it, or I should say institutions in general were against it. I mean, I think the first museum shows that I knew of were in Europe in the mid-'80s. The Groningen Museum in Holland, for example, was one museum which showed canvases painted by graffiti artists. Before I moved to New York, I would visit New York, and I saw it maybe as early as 1970, just the tags on the trains and on the walls, and that attracted my attention then. I moved to New York in 1973, and it was already flourishing and had gone way beyond just tagging. It had become piecing, and the calligraphy that we recognize today as graffiti was already underway at that time. So I was a newcomer, and you couldn't escape seeing it, because if you rode the trains to go to work, which I did, you'd see them every day. It wasn't until I figured out that the trains ran outside also. There were elevated trains in the outer boroughs, and from that vantage point I realized I could take decent photographs.
Get funky in the place. Get funky in the place.
Speaking primarily about New York City, the graffiti culture in the 80s was still alive as the original indigenous culture, being young people painting trains, painting walls. That has gone away. It has been replaced by a kind of international scene where people come to New York, other artists from around the world have friendships with artists who are usually older now, since 30, 35 years have gone past, and there are people in their 40s and 50s, and they paint together. New artists coming along from New York City, they're very few, because it's not the kind of thing that young people emulate anymore. So judging from looking around the world, I think that the seat of illegal train painting is elsewhere. It's in Italy, for instance, and in other European countries. It doesn't take place in the United States, with the exception of the freight trains. Young kids, young men mostly, and some women are still painting the freight trains in the United States. I think that there is public misunderstanding of the value and the meaning of street art, which events like this in a museum help to correct. So I'm very glad that Frontier is doing this, and that the Museum of Modern Art in Bologna is doing this. I think also that young people need to know where this comes from, the history, and that it's important not to lose the understanding of the original culture of painting publicly, of painting illegally, and what were the motivations to do it, and in what way is it important that it's actually done.